Welcome to the Tesla Tidbits podcast, episode 0. My name is DJ, and this is the origin show for what has become my obsession, and yours probably too if you're listening to this, and that is all things Tesla. So, who am I and why should you care? Well, the short answer is nobody, and you shouldn't. But I got time to fill, so here's the longer answer. I've been following Tesla cursorily since the launch of Roadster. I've always had a very keen interest in electric cars, and way back when Roadster came out, it was the holy grail of cars to me. Even at that time, I already had a muscle car, but I was just absolutely fascinated with the idea of an electric car, and especially an electric sports car that was awesome. But people in their 20s can't generally afford six-figure cars as a rule, and I never did more than admire what the company was doing. In the meantime, though, later my family purchased an '08 Civic Hybrid to begin boarding the EV train. Now, I know the hybrid is not actually an EV, but hey, cut me some slack. At least I was on the right path there, and there wasn't really any EV to be had at the time that would actually fill that bill. Things got more real in the early 2010s when Model S and then X were introduced, but still, S and X were way out of my price range. Being the EV enthusiast, though, this did lead me to the Nissan Leaf at its introduction, but having a daily commute totaling 110 miles in a cold weather climate made that infeasible in a hurry. Later, the Chevy Volt caught my eye, but it was really hard to plunk down $40,000 plus before incentives for what that car was. However, it was at that point that I decided, at some point in my life, whether Model 3 was ever released or not, I'd own a Tesla. Fast forward to March 31st, 2016, and the unveiling of the Model 3. I was smitten. I am certainly still in deep smit. After learning that the deposit was fully refundable and having wasted precious minutes already after watching the unveil and hearing the reservation count before the car was ever even seen, I approached my wife at lunch on April 1st about buying the car. We had the money to spare in the account for the deposit, and if things changed financially for us, I could always recover the money. After a surprisingly brief conversation, she agreed, and my Model 3 reservation went in at 4:10 Eastern Time on April 1st. Since then, I can't get this car off my mind. I mean, can you? It's going to be a long 2 years. I devour every bit of information possible. I am all over the Tesla Motors subreddit, Tesla Motors Club, basically all sources of news, all things Tesla. And I need an outlet, or I am going to drive my friends and family bonkers about this car if I can't talk to some like-minded folks about it. And so I'm sending this podcast out into the ether. The format is going to be very simple. Just a daily show, taking up not more than 5 minutes of your time, recapping the top Tesla news of the day across everything I can find. If you want to hear all there is to hear about Tesla condensed to a bite-sized, scrumptious morsel, you've got your answer. Other things you should definitely know include the fact that while I'm definitely a geek, by trade even, I am not a sound engineer, nor have I ever claimed to be one. I absolutely have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to the nuts and bolts of recording this thing. I've done the best I can in procuring equipment that will allow the podcast to not sound like it was recorded with a tin can and string. If you're curious about the hardware, it's currently GarageBand on a Mac Air from mid-2012 with a Blue Yeti microphone and an Astro A40 headset plugged in to that Blue Yeti. Lastly, I've set up a Patreon account to help fund this obsession. I expect zero for this podcast. It's a labor of love. However, at the same time, if you enjoy what I'm doing and would like to help a brother out toward his Model 3, all proceeds of this Patreon are going to go toward my Model 3 fund. So head on over to patreon.com/Tesla Tidbits and become a patron. I have no fancy rewards or anything like that. All I can offer is my sincere gratitude that you enjoy my content enough to pay for it. I know most podcasts on Patreon have some sort of reward system tied out to it, but I'm just one guy with a obsession trying to have an outlet for it. I am suggesting $1 a month as the contribution, but contribute more or less as you see value. As the boys over at Cord Killers say, it's a nickel an episode, and hopefully you find at least that much value. With enough patrons, or just because I need to talk even more about Tesla, a longer weekly podcast may materialize, talking about topics of interest in addition to the daily news podcast. I'm also setting up a YouTube page as well, where eventually you'll find all the episodes of this show. At the moment, though, there's no fancy vanity URL available to me, so hopefully I can change that soon. That's it for the origin episode of Tesla Tidbits. I kind of got it in just over what I planned for the normal news episodes to be. Look for tomorrow for the first batch of news delivered to your ear holes. Until then, charge it up and hit the road.